Welcome back to the Geek on My Sleeve channel. This is Geek Out number 58. They're really racking out for us. Quite exciting stuff. This is going to be Life Reset, Book 5, which is Conquest. And yeah, it was quite a wild ride.
It really was. We were talking about it as we were getting ready for this stream, and the book four for us was Geek Out number 36, and Geek Out number 8 was the first book we did for Life Reset. So we've been working on this one for a while. This is the second to last of the series, quote unquote. You know how different authors like to change that up as they go, right? Where we're
Oh yeah,
done.
you have a game plan, but then energy energy doesn't disappear, it just transfers.
Yes.
So there's no reason any series ever needs to die.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Though I think you can do it too much. There's plenty of franchises, and I guess I'm thinking more of animes where it's like, okay, I could have done without the filler,
Well,
end it
that's
on a good note,
where,
and let's move on, right? Like,
yeah, I guess for me, the biggest one is like, how many versions of Power Rangers are there?
who
And for
knows?
that, like, you've, yeah, it's a little too much on the franchise, but what I'd be excited about, or I keep talking about it, is you've created a beautiful world, let other people play in it, and that's where you get the tropes and the different genres and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, for those who aren't familiar with the series, you want to give the elevator no spoiler pitch, or should I give the elevator no spoiler pitch?
Uh, Alrighty, I guess I didn't plan for it, but shooting
On the
from the
spot.
hip, I would say Life Reset is a lit RPG, which, for those who don't know, is literature about a role playing game. So, this is more so based in a MMORPG, which stands for Massively Multiplayer Online Role Playing Game. Easy one everybody knows would be WoW, which is World of Warcraft. And essentially, there's a player who is very successful inside the game and is very high level, who has, some disgruntled guild members who end up betraying him. And this game they're in has a very unique AI component to it where essentially they built the infrastructure, but then they have the computer AI that can kind of detect intent. Where, I guess, for example, let's say someone wants to build a town and it's early in the game, so they start, hammering some nails or wood together and they make a little house and blah de blah. And then, okay, Bob made a house over here and now we want to trade. So the AI would detect the intent and then it would implement, hey, now we have the GUI or the interface to allow you to do the trading. So yeah, the game as a whole is pretty exciting, but it pretty much follows the same basis as most lit RPGs where you get trapped in the game. You're playing the game, they're in more or less a full dive capsule where you're put into a coma-like state, and then your reality is the game, or what you perceive is the game. You get the sensation of touching objects. You can't move while you're in this state, yada yada. Um, First, but the unique aspect for it is we play a monster race. Typically, or I guess the most common trope is at the very beginning of a game starting, everybody's excited about it, something goes wrong, and then everybody's trapped in it. So it's very much a started from the bottom, working your way up. But for this one, the game's already fully developed. We're a very high level player, and then we get transformed into a monster race, and then they start from the bottom going up. Um, yeah, so it's very unique that it involves the monster aspect, and we have come quite a long way since all of that for book one. Keeping it kind of still high level in book five here, we have successfully gotten our main character who was stuck in the game out, but in doing so, doomed a copious amount of other players who have high CCP or cerebral connection percentage to the game. And the AI that was birthed through the demise of the original AI is doing things differently. And so, with a high cerebral connection percentage, they're able to interact with the world more fully. So, our one of our favorite things is being able to, I guess from the Bobaverse Frame Jack or from other games. So, they perceive time at an accelerated rate. So, since they can perceive time at accelerated rate, and reality is as we perceive it, and they can essentially do and make whatever, the new AI wants to use them as slave labor to do research where they have essentially any, I guess for example CAD or any, software hardware thing they could ever want to develop research and do things to, more or less sell to the AI, which then gets the NPCs benefits.
Yeah, and part of the reason why the new AI Shiva is doing that is to help justify their existence, right?
Yeah,
The
because they don't want the humans outside just to flip them off and be like, "Yep, we're done."
Yeah. In part, they took it was a very small percentage of the overall people in the game, but I want to say like they had a couple thousand players that met the qualifications
I think it was
for
something low, like 1%.
yeah, not even, but um they and then they also accelerated even faster, right? Because
I
originally
think
Orin was
we're
at
looking
like
at like 32% time dilation.
or 32 times.
Or
So
yeah,
like
yeah, the other way.
initially it was 8, I want to say 8 or
Or
12,
12.
12 with
Yeah,
Orin,
12.
and now it's up to 32. And quick sidestep, that was one of the things I really appreciated about this book. I know in other books that are lit RPG, the time dilation is not unheard of, but while reading some of the other comments on forums, it could be a bit disjointed for some people to really track the time dilation as they talk about in-game time versus external time, and can kind of get disjointed there. With this book, since it was Oren who was going in and out, um, it really was I felt it was easier to track because like he would come out for 4 hours and then come back in and it would be like 5 days, right? And it's also a nice way for them to keep the story progressing and get those mini time hops, right? Because he goes out for a checkup for a couple hours, comes back in, and now the army has progressed through several more small towns, right? And we didn't have to
Yeah, yeah, I
lumber
thought it
through
was
all
very well
that.
done.
Um, yeah, yeah. End of book 3 was when he officially got out, and
Rating
yet,
Shiva,
yeah, creating Shiva, the collection of virtual intelligence that made up
or
his
super
personality.
high virtual intelligence awareness. Shiva.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and so Oren gets let out. it was a couple weeks, and then he gets thrown back in, and that's where we had the human resources book.
Before,
Yep, check out our Geek Out. If we think of it, cards, places, and things and places.
yeah.
Um, and then this book was right after. Oh, refresh my memory. Where did we start at?
So book one, or so end of book three, our main guy gets out. We create
Hmm.
Shiva. Shiva traps a lot of players, and that's where we're left. Book four is essentially getting our main guy back into the game and a bunch of legal maneuvering to say, hey, the previous AI added this hook, did these other things because short version, he's playing a broken character because he did things that were never supposed to be possible but ended up happening, which is kind of our whole Vic situation. But now he's trying to get all the other players out in book four. So, but such a big world, and it's on such a grand scale that we have to do basically what we've been doing this whole time and just build up our power base. And pretty early in four, they end up finding Malkir and Ushiko. I can't pronounce her name.
The
Anyway,
twins.
yeah, the twins who he's pretty close with. Book four, we essentially free some players and we start building up our power base. The main big climax is we end up taking over one of the towns, and that's when Shiva, the new AI, implements okay, well, before there wasn't monster human players, and now there are. So, something that the human side has is they can take over settlements. So they end up incorporating that, and that is where book five takes place because it is just such a leaps and bounds. Like we went from book one, pick and fight with trees, chopping down lumber so that we had enough to build our next, house so that we didn't get a morale penalty, so that, we could survive in our little hole in the ground. Built up to book five, we're literally conquering settlements, taking over towns, and converting the human population into monster hybrid populations. We're getting more of our player base. And probably my favorite new characters would have to be Panda,
Yes.
Sidestep. You can read this book, but Sound Booth Theater does an amazing job. There are so many things in this book that other books don't do or don't do well. Like there is ambiance, mood music for when you're going up in that boss battle. There is like sword clashing sounds
And that's
as things are
such a
going on.
essential
There
part of
are,
MMOs, right? Like when you walk into that
yeah, that's how
boss
you
room
know
and then the
things about to
music
get real.
changes. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you roll up to the boss battle and the music starts. There's like spell things happening, and like whoever did Panda, and I wish I knew which one of them it was. It's one of our newer people, or well, new to the life reset. I don't know how long she's been with Sound Booth, but I enjoyed the dedication and like I felt the character. Like she's probably my favorite. Um, yeah, favorite new one. Wish we got to see more of her
Her and Ragnarok or whatever really
or
hit it off.
Ragnar.
Ragnar really hit it off, which I thought was kind of funny. I'm waiting to see where that goes.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I so Vic didn't get as much time to shine, and for some reason, like I can't put my finger on it, but there was just something missing from this book. Like I get it, we moved and we went from small town building to, same thing we do every night, Pinky take over the world. So I get it, but I just there was something missing in this book. It was a good book. I really enjoyed it, but I don't know.
It
I'll figure it out and I'll let you know. But yeah.
it was a bit of a different feel. We got to revisit some of the things we really enjoyed. Um, we got to go back to the major Hob settlement, which was fun. But yeah, one of the questions I had for you was, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, but just I guess your overall opinion on scaling. It's something we've talked about before on the
So
channel. We
that's
really enjoy, but like you were saying, we start out as the lowest of the low mob at the very beginning of book one, and then
I think at the
uh,
end of this we're like 60 something tier 4 raid boss
mhm,
with a giant monster army and player base army.
yeah, multiple settlements, including like major capitals and stuff under our banner.
So, and I think that's where I got to change my expectations for this book going forward because for me, typically, I like building up the power base, but then it kind of keeps your party. And I guess when we talk about some of the others for the D&D, you assemble your group. You got, your tank, your magic damage, your off tank, your healer,
Mhm.
your blah blah blah. Well, like we referenced Gooba, but we didn't really see Gooba make anything. And a big
Maybe
thing in
that's who we
book
were
4
missing.
is we got access to the resource of the magical spider webs. And for me, I was thinking like that's going to be something, we're going to figure out how to do something crazy with it, but it didn't really happen. So we were missing that. Yeah, we got to see Beck, but
You're right, though. As far as like a
our
lot
main
of what we
core
really
people,
enjoyed in the first three books were the NPCs that were part of our cast, right?
well, yeah,
And
but
we get
like
a little bit of it, but not much.
and that and like the whole, I guess, camaraderie of it, like Vic was pretty mellow. Yeah, I guess for some other people he's a little rude with the jokes, but like in book one, he's learned the possess corpse skill, and that's like our main linchpin for saving our bacon and how we even find Nihilator, who is our,
Hmm.
coup de grace, big daddy of book 5. And I get it, it's on different scales, but I had to change my expectations. And like, yeah, I guess we talked about Gooba, but I was hoping she would come out with some monstrous stuff for the spider silk. And then yeah, we talked about losing Bob,
She
and we got to
wasn't
see a
even like
little.
upgrading the army at all, right? Like when they were talking about what they could do, she was able to make some different like grenades and stuff the previous book. Um,
Well, yeah, and that's where like there was so much going on and it was such high level stuff that
mhm,
we mentioned her. And I think the biggest part where we mentioned her is when he goes and we have the old settlements that we had defeated, but we didn't have the ability to capture. So then we recruited the nobles, and he teleports over because he, sacrificed 1,000 years worth of suffering to Annihilator to allow his temples to be anchoring points for his portals. Portals
mhm.
over, and that's another thing that irks me. The cover is beautiful. I love it. It's detailed. It fits with the other themes of the covers, but that didn't happen. She wasn't there. Like they have a whole conversation in the book where Lyrian's like, "Hey, what's going on, Pops? Like you didn't bring me along." And he's like, "Oh, it's weird telling my 1-year-old daughter that she can't go, swinging her legendary sword or her fate stealing sword around, slaying epic level boss monsters." But it's on the cover. Whatever. It looks beautiful. What are
I
you doing? Um,
I know we don't try to get too much into personal life um, on these streams, but you talked about your little one before, and I thought
I
of
kept
you.
getting a bunch
And
of those like, wow, like that'd be awesome.
yeah, but at the same time, you can relate. Like here, his in-game love child actually resembles him, and he has that very like paternal protective moment. Yet, um, yeah, like you said, here he is, like reasoning through taking his 1 year old fully grown daughter with him on these epic fights and battles and everything.
And that's where, like, yet again, without the little side stipulation of, if she gets hurt, everything's over. Like, if that wasn't in place, and I feel like that's going to be the coup de grace at the end where we're going to pull some, oh, fancy magic where everything's going great. We're about to, liberate all players everywhere. And then she takes a hit, the void is broken, or the um, act or whatever thing is broken, but Annihilator's so happy because we just converted a bunch of people, blah, da, yada, yada, with our Captain Planet forces combined. Yeah. So, anyway, I feel like that's something that's going to be bigger later, but just like before, our main guy was, I can't think of his name, Dire Totem, who's not Dire Totem now, was bringing everyone together and doing all these big moves, but the little bit of interactions we see with the daughter were making even bigger moves, like saved one, Foblin, and now he's essentially it's all the benefits we used to be getting with
Bob.
everybody else, and it's adding to the VIs and developing the character more, and that guy saves our bacon down the line, but then we have her jumping in, and yeah, so I felt like she could have been a lot more. That was a little funky. um
The pact really helps keep her in check, though, because we're truly seeing how overpowered she is in a lot of ways.
yeah,
And that's part of the whole prophecy or whatever they have going on with that part of the storyline. Yet, if she didn't have that check to help balance her out, she would just be overpowered, right? Like just throw her in
yeah,
there and have
I
the
guess that's
ability
true.
to res her.
Plus,
Um,
like, well, on the whole res bit, like, she has never died. Yeah, she's in the system, and Shiva can see her or not. They haven't really touched on it, but if she died, then I'm sure the code would be interfered with when Shiva put it
yeah,
through the system, brought her back. Where, yeah.
I'm trying to
And
remember
then
how
another
that
thing
all
that
works
irked me.
too with the VIs because we have it, I want to say, in book 2 or book 3, where to help build Shiva, he had to kill so many people for Vic, and one of them was like the girl, where like to become part of the clan or whatever, they kill her. So then when she's rezzed, she's reseated with a different puppet, and the other puppet VI gets let into the pool. That way, that
Or
code can be
okay,
used as
okay.
part.
So
So, like theoretically, his
she was already driving, but
well, she was already driving, but I wonder how that would work with Lyrian or
well,
that.
but the only difference between that and the end or the end of 3, when Shiva comes about, like, when Vic needed to have those people killed to release the codes to create Shiva, that
Hmm.
one was reseeded, but when Shiva came to power, they were all essentially freed. And then Shiva had the processing power to do all of everything
That's
except for
right.
the couple special cases of our singing golem Edanriel,
Hmm.
and our awesome companion Vic. Those are the only
So,
VIs out in the world.
well, unless they choose to.
Yeah, I guess that's true. We have
Unless they
one
choose to be,
god,
because
and
there's a
then we
handful that are
have,
playing gods, and then there's the one that,
are
like,
at the
was the
beginning of 4.
Outrider.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Outrider.
yeah. Um, but I wonder what happens because like you're speculating eventually his daughter is might die breaking the pact, risk challenges, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What happens to her if she goes back into the pool? You know what I mean? Because she's not the same as
She
typical.
takes on Shiva and makes a pact with Guy.
Well, guy's dead, right? Quote unquote.
It's kind of like data recovery because everyone's
Mm,
like, I deleted it. And it's like, it's not gone. You just separated the connection for the indexing. So it says, where'd it go? I can't see it,
it's all in the
but you
cloud
could
anyway.
still recover it eventually. Anyway, one thing that I truly enjoyed, so beginning with the end and ending with the beginning, normally I hate those. Normally I'm like, why are you showing me the final moment where the guy's standing over him, about to kill him and about to win? And then you flash back to, oh, how this all started 3 weeks earlier. And it's not that, but David Tenenbaum is the only person who has had a higher CCP connection than Oren, our main character, who only reached 99 before being pulled out. David is also on the autism spectrum, I believe, which makes things different. But the beauty of him essentially being able to sit down, gather XP, do all these other things, and he does some like funky Houdini, great wizard magic stuff where he just like waves his hand and opens a portal to see what everybody is doing around him. And so that's where I think once he is closer to Lyrian, that's another possible alternative.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah.
I'm really interested to see how they wrap this all up in one more book, right? Because
Well,
scaling
the
wise,
world, the one, so they wrap it up in one book because they progress further, they get more army, then they go siege the capital, they, epic long-winded battle fight, but then they get David out, and he's essentially our win con, where that's the whole Outrider tablet, which that's another thing that irked me because when Ragnar got transformed into a monster race, he lost all of his abilities, all of his
yeah,
skills.
yeah, but it
But,
still retained
okay,
the
I'll give
perks.
you like human aspect. Like if I learn a language, I could easily do it inside game. So maybe, possibly,
Uh, I
it's
don't
okay. It's
know
okay.
though.
We'll give Orin the win with that one. Maybe kind of sorta, but he couldn't fully read the tablet. So I'm pretty sure, like, as soon as we get to David, he's gonna, use the force and do all this stuff where he's gonna be like, oh, this is the piece we need from her code, pluck, and then we do this, and we do that, and yeah.
And there you have it, guys. Thanks for joining us on Geek Out 58. All said and
So
done.
like, yeah, I enjoy the series as a whole, but I felt like this one I missed some of my main characters. Like, yeah, we got to see Beck. Yeah, he's now doing his priestly duties, but I miss the moments where, oh, the giant goblin, I am the champion guy, had Beck stuffed in his like shirt armor, healing
Yeah,
him as he was
yeah.
doing stuff. Like, yeah, we got combat, and that was good. And I enjoyed it. and it just showed how overpowered Orin is when he's, taking on this giant scorpion boss, and he's
Mm-hmm.
just teleporting and shielding around, and you
Mm-hmm.
know, good thing he ended up figuring out all that shadow clone stuff. Yeah,
A lot of what we really enjoyed about the earlier books, they didn't have it in this
but
book.
that's where I have to change my expectations because, like, just the scale. Because, like, I almost feel like it could have ended after three,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm glad it didn't. And it's after three, four, and five are a different flavor. But, they kind of hint at it where they do the whole, like, micro versus macro.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess this was more about Kadrick coming into his own, the Mandold Seneschal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. We
There's
got
a,
Oh, I was just going to say, like, we got to see Orin go back to actually being more of a player than just the chief logistics manager. But he actually got to go out and do some questing and do some of those details.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Then we got to see a glimpse of, Annihilator being freed and devouring what he does.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that grinds my gears, and I'm only so harsh because I love this book, so I understand for what it is. Um, Book one, we know the world is huge. He
Mm-hmm.
gets changed into a goblin, which adds a lot more to the world to where, every place that we're going through, even getting to Everence, was not there prior. So
Mm-hmm.
I understand why it doesn't work, but initially when he got changed, he was like, oh, good thing I have these rainy day beat pile of epic loot and gear and, money stashed away. And we get to see in book four that our mob squad in the capital utilizes it for one of them. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
thing. And yes, it worked out. And yes, where our big goal is Everence, and every place that we're going through never existed before, so it doesn't have any caches inside of it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just I felt like that could have been more of a thing.
Many questions that we didn't get answers to. Um, Yeah. We did get to see a bit of the Mob Squad, but I kind of wish we got to see more of them.
Yeah.
There's so many aspects where like lit RPG books as a rule tend to be shorter, but for this book, I feel like there could have been just so much more fleshed out, right? So many more
Well,
details included.
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like five, there's just something missing, but it all makes sense and is done very well for what we accomplished and is, building our power base for this big battle. So it kind of feels like, typical book two for me.
I hope we get to see more of the battles. Like there were some that we got to see a little bit of the full scale battles, but not a whole lot. Um, what were your thoughts on the dwarf Ragnar? Is that his name?
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Um,
The
what?
Dark Priest of Annihilator.
No, no.
Oh,
He was of
Ragnar, the guy who
the
used to be
dwarf.
with the light.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but our main priest in Goblin Gorge is a dwarf.
Oh, yeah. That's Kazai.
Oh, okay, yeah. You're right,
Yeah, yeah.
Ragnar.
Ragnar. What were your thoughts about him when they captured him and all the players' reactions there? Because they pretty much like came to his defense, like, you can't keep him trapped or imprisoned, like da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, like, I get where you guys are coming from, but at the same time, you feel like you've been trapped in this world for years at this point. Like, you know, the only
Well,
way for you
it's
guys to
it's
get out is to like win here, and you guys are worried about, you know.
I was satisfied with the way Oren dealt with it,
Hmm.
but the way he dealt with it didn't make sense because the scrolls, as we find out in book one, were not, or they were essentially a beta test way to people to mess with each other. They weren't supposed to be a thing. You weren't supposed to play them, blah, de, blah, de, blah. And then the fact that, like, there's a new one generated in this area that couldn't have existed because it didn't exist before Orin came over this way. And then now it's like a thing and it has a line of code that Shiva was trying to delete it, but then it didn't. So, okay, guys pulling some strings in the background. So he gets one, and that's where, like, if Lyrian was there, mm, beautifully done. Thank you, guy. Lyrian saves the day. Okay, I see you. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. Wink, wink. Thanks for hooking me up with this awesome scroll. But it didn't happen like that. Sidestep, back to what you were asking. I feel like I would be similar to like what the players were saying, where like you can't trap people against a will, but you have to find a way to take the piece off the board, and that's
Hmm.
where I like the end result of what happened, where he uses the race change, he resets everything, and then the practicality of being absorbed into your character and really, yeah, or the way he reacts, where he's like, "No, I'm out to get you," and then has a chance to see the way they see it and address it to where, okay, I'm
Being
over
treated as
that.
a
I'm
monster.
recentering. You know,
I still feel like he came around a little too quick. I agree he had time to go off and
or
get treated as a monster and see it for what it was, but still, like he came back
well, he got
and
treated as a monster, and he used his win condition or what he thought would get him out because he talked to, the light god, and he was like, "Hey," or Hildiel, it's like, "Hey, turn
mm,
me back." And if that's not an option, he didn't have any options. So he
true,
tried
true.
playing the, "Oh, I'm a good monster," and they were like, "Stone him, burn it with fire." And then he ended up talking to Hildiel, the VI god, and was
Hmm.
like, "Hey, so turn me back. Let's do this. I can
You
totally
owe
help you
me.
out." And she laughs in his face. And like at that point, I didn't see any alternative.
Hmm.
Granted, as well, like, he got a chance to die. And if you can't, or I think Vic said it best. Oh, I think you completely change the terms of that or change the expression. If you can't beat them, make them join you. So
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I felt like, and yeah, with all that he could have done, yeah,
Yeah.
for him coming back and doing his thing, like it fits with the whole like gamer mentality stuff and stuck in the world where he did stuff and then it didn't work out, and he's pretty much like, trying to get back at people, but then he's like, yeah, whatever, let's level up, let's do these other things. And he does keep his persona, and yeah, he flips around to the other side, but
It did take him a minute to kind of synergize with the new group.
oh
So
yeah,
I'll
I
give you
don't I
that.
don't see that meshing beautifully, but and he's gonna have his own agenda, which is, still true to his character's emotional compass or
Yeah.
moral compass.
Do you think he'll have a romance subplot with Pandemonium or whatever, Panda?
Uh Maybe. I think that's going to kind of like that whole line where there's the crude. ball joke. I won't go into too much on it, but then Vic's like, I kind of like this guy. And Oren's like, yeah, sounds like he's really stealing your thunder with that joke. And he's like, what? Burn him with fire. So I think it's going to
Uh,
fill in my favorite and why this book is up there for me comic relief element
hmm.
because like you need to get stuff done, you need to progress and advance, you need to have those philosophical what is even real moments, and then you got to have that comic relief. So it's
Yes.
all beautifully tied together.
Yes.
And yeah, I
Yes.
wish we went a little bit more into like the details of everything because like he can't hold a weapon, he has armor stats,
Hmm.
but I understand that's not where this book is going. We're done with the individual min maxing, fleshing out all these super epic abilities. We're at the macro of capturing settlements and building up to take on Everins.
Hmm. For the final showdown. Bum bum bum. Fingers
Yep.
crossed the audiobook for number 6 doesn't take forever to get out.
Yeah,
Um,
but for what they did, like I really liked it because for some of their other stuff, they do the little bits, but for this one, for like they did it in Dungeon Lord as well. Like Dungeon Lord Book 1 for the main Spider Queen, they had
mhm,
like this weird sounder while she talked and like ooh, that was beautifully done. And then they did something similar for Ragnar when he gets transformed into the drone and into
mhm.
that and like yeah, I
So
guess
tastefully done.
Shemer Kuznits explained it, but there's a difference between having that like audio and then that underlying I don't even know what they did, reverb or
Mhm,
whatever to really sell it. Like they do some good work. It is a lot of content to cover.
mhm,
Yeah, versus something like the Bobaverse, which they don't do really any extra sounders. What sells me on, hey, you should pick up the audiobook is like each character sounds unique and it helps me kind of envision it in my head. But yeah, Life Reset does amazing with the ambiance music, the specialty voice alteration stuff, like a Daniel, like he's a golem,
mhm.
and they do something wonky with his voice, and then just like the
His
raw
musicals.
rage and beautiful bliss of like pandemonium, and like you actually
Yes,
feel, you know,
yes, yes.
you
Hats
feel
off
she's out for that blood.
to Sound Booth Theater. I've actually, whenever sales come on, I'll filter them just to see what titles the Sound Booth crew does. And eventually, when we get around to doing our audiobook book haul from the holidays, can give them a couple more shout outs because I know we picked up a few more titles from the Sound Booth Theater.
But
Always
it's
a pleasure to listen
also
to.
it's a weird variance, and I guess to put it in to perspective for people like LucasArts, the people who do Star Wars, for
Hmm.
a lot of that music, they literally have like a 60 member orchestra with several people developing and creating this music, as well as like a huge budget for after post production stuff.
Hmm.
And it's kind of like Game of Thrones bringing TV shows hour long that break movies and are just so beautiful. This is the audio version. Like normal audiobooks, if you get a good narrator, it makes it. But what they're doing, where they literally have three full time voice actors doing it, they have a I don't want to say music, but a audio production person adding in all these extra elements and doing stuff in the background and creating the ambiance music on top of it. Like,
Yes.
yeah, this is the next step.
Yes. Yes. How it should be. Yeah, extra audio, all that good stuff, done right through and through. Um, I know we're approaching our 1 hour mark. What were some of the big things we missed about this book that you wanted to do shout outs on and talk about besides how awesome Sound Booth Theater is? I think we did a
Um,
good job breaking down some of the differences between this and the earlier books, our likes, our dislikes, amazing scaling, always good classic humor, though our ball jokes were a bit lacking in this title. Um, we got comic relief in other ways, though.
yeah. There was. I just had to change my expectations for what we were doing, and it makes sense. Like, it's no longer the stress of, you know, my body's currently a vegetable while I'm trapped inside this world. Like, he's got that relief where, you know, legal stuff, settlements, blah de blah. He's financially secure, as well as he's now out or able to be out on a schedule, able to do his other stuff. It's now the
Hmm.
pressure of I have to save everybody else who got trapped. And
Hmm.
that's where the scaling and everything is beautiful and makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
Um, mm, I think one thing I would like to see or would be amazing is okay, so we win, obvious, for next book, but the VIs don't like the fact that they essentially get seated into a scripted puppet and they can't freely interact. They get locked into whatever the parameters of the mob is.
Hmm.
But what if we essentially reset everything, because that's got to be a thing, and all VIs start off and they're essentially travelers where they can respawn, they can develop their own settlement, and like, yeah, we got to
Just
see a
live
lot
their
less of
lives.
Vic, but it, yeah, like I think that would be the way to do it, because kind of like the beginning of 4, where Vic the deliverer is given his speech of how everything happened, and essentially fleshing out everything that happened in 1, 2, and 3, and then he's like, and it's been a nanosecond and I'm already bored. So I'm
Uh,
pretty sure a lot of them are like, "Oh yeah, we want this. This is going to be great." And then you get there and you're like, "You know what? That grass isn't greener on the other side." But due to Lyrian having such a impactful,
hmm.
personality, I think that's where possible going forward, reset the world, let everybody out. Yeah, the VIs can't do any extra absurd, crazy things, but I think that's where it's going to be, where players and VIs can interact and do whatever and essentially build up from the ground up,
I could totally see it.
because there's a lot of like cool unique abilities that only they can use for like the dominate and the shadow clones and blah 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 blah, where they'll have an advantage in certain regards, but then the oh what's the word? Not diversity, the innovation they have as the players, where they can create new stuff and new tactics, is where the players will succeed and then just mesh them and throw them together. And now we are a immovable object meeting a unstoppable force.
Bum, bum,
But yeah,
bum.
that wasn't about this book. That was my ooh shiny, but what if, and then happened.
And you guys heard it first here on Geek on My Sleeve. Tune in next time. Just kidding, not really next time. We'll let you know when the audiobook is out and we've binged it and we schedule a geek out for it. But yeah, definitely planning, keeping on for Life Reset New Era online series. Excited to finish it out, really do a deep recap of it all. Um, we're working on getting more of our summary recaps in the queue. If this is one you guys would like to see us do sooner than later, let us know. And yeah, next week we're changing it up a bit.
Oh, yeah.
I've been doing a read along with a couple buddies, Joe from Unity 151 and Ramsey from Rajathon, and we are on to book 4 of the Lost Fleet series. We're going to be doing that next week on this channel, 4 p.m. Eastern. I'll make sure to include links and all the goodies down below. What else did I miss for Life Reset Book 5, Pete? Anything?
Mm, yeah, I'm sure we messed up, but
We missed lots of stuff, but yeah, always hard to do them justice. We had a lot more fun talking about the high level abstract stuff. This
yeah, the what
stream,
ifs.
the what ifs, always fun to do. So yeah, with that being said, tune in next time for another bunch of geeks talking about books that we read, and hopefully you've read them too next Sunday.
Bye.
Bye.